Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are right now. Welcome to today's sharing of Harmonize2Energize. And today it's the Mystery Presenter Friday, where we have someone from the International JIN SHIN JYUTSU community who's going to be sharing their appreciation, if you like, and if you will, of JIN SHIN JYUTSU, maybe some stories, maybe some self-help. I leave it up to each individual to flow with whatever comes from their heart at the time. But before we go there, if there's anyone brand new and if there's anyone who wants a revision, JIN SHIN JYUTSU is an art of harmonizing life energy, which is also known as prana or chi, depending on which culture you were brought up in, as it moves through energy pathways via locks, 26 of them, just like locks in a canal. They adjust how the energy moves through the body. And it's a harmonizing art. We use our fingers, tips of fingers, back of hands, palms, thumbs, and place them on these energy locks, 26 of them left and right of the spine, 3 in the arm. And when we place them on the energy locks, which size-wise are unique to you, they're your individual size, when we place our hands, we listen for a pulse, which sounds very similar to the blood pulse that you pick up on the radial artery. And in time, with practice, you'll hear a different level of the blood pulse, which is actually the energy. And in traditional Chinese medicine and Asian theory, it's understood that the blood follows the energy. So the energy came first, and then the blood follows, the matter. And this brings us into this whole philosophy of understanding that JIN SHIN JYUTSU looks at the worldview of energy dancing down from subtler realms, above the head, heaven the head, down to denser realms, the feet, close to the earth. And in native terms, heaven the Father and the earth the Mother. So JIN SHIN JYUTSU was brought to the West by Mary Ino Burmeister, a Seattle-born Japanese-American who spent time in Japan during the war years and met a teacher, a master called Jiro Murai, who had investigated how this energy form we call JIN SHIN JYUTSU, which, by the way, in translation from Japanese, is the art of the creator through compassionate man. I tend to say through compassionate human, which covers both genders, and who, in I think it's in the Islamic tradition, represents or describes the heart. And JIN SHIN JYUTSU is an art or heart of compassion. And Jiro Murai taught what he knew at the time to Mary Ino Burmeister in Japan. And he asked her if she wanted to bring that knowledge, that wisdom back to America. And she subsequently did, after studying with him for some 17 years, 12 of which were by correspondence. And there was only one other disciple that Jiro Murai gave.
This cauldron.
Could you mute yourself? Gave the responsibility or the possibility of sharing JIN SHIN JYUTSU, and that was Haruki Kato. And he's no longer with us either, but he has a son, Sadaki. And Sadaki, I don't know whether Sadaki is teaching at the moment, but he definitely teaches JIN SHIN JYUTSU that his father taught. Can you all, those of you that are not muted, can you mute yourself? Because I'm having a problem muting you. Now it's working. Okay, good. All right, well, but without further ado, that chuckle in the background is from today's mystery presenter, and perhaps he's no longer a mystery because I was yakking away to him right at the beginning. So here we go, and welcome Richard Staudt from Prescott, Arizona, a good buddy of mine from, I can't remember when I met you, but we connected straight away. And Richard is a really strong advocate for the healing arts. And it's my honor and pleasure, privilege to have him on today to share with you whatever he wants to share about his journey with energy. So without further ado, I'm going to scarper and hand it over to you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. This is such a honor and a privilege to be part of this. I think it's phenomenal that this is so accessible worldwide. Oh my gosh. Hey, whatever y'all did, thank you so much. We're starting to get rain out here.
Really?
In Prescott. So yes, this is great. I'll have to make sure this is on every Friday. But no, it's wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity. I know it's going to sound a little narcissistic. I was asked to go ahead and share about my experiences, where my frame of reference is, where I'm coming from, and I'm going to set my timer. So I'm very informal about this. I've been reviewing a lot of the other sequences that you've had. Yeah. And you have some phenomenal presenters. I will let you know, I'm going to be coming from more of a clinical sense of how I go ahead and utilize it, not only for myself, but for my outpatients and inpatients. I work as an occupational therapist. I've been in the field for over 33 years, which is pretty amazing nowadays with all the different changes in occupation. I was
Jewish person or a Spanish somehow.
Yeah. Well, I just love him. You know, he's a real man.
Can you mute yourself, please?
What?
Oh, good. I was hoping I wasn't hearing voices. All right, perfect.
You were hearing voices for sure. But I just blamed them. On you go.
Beautiful. No, the sound of reason. So I'm going to go ahead and start off basically how and why I'm here. Myself, I started as an occupational therapist, working primarily with adults, with their recovery, everything from neurological, stroke, head injury. Also, then we have orthopedics, because you got, of course, recovery from surgeries and whatnot. But what I want to do is I like to go ahead and which is very common, if we can all start with our 26s and just sort of allow ourselves to get focused and sort of just sink into the moment. Let your breath become natural. I just letting you know, I also, before I started JIN SHIN, I practiced myofascial release under the tutelage of John Barnes. I started his work back in 1995, and I'm a senior instructor for him. But a lot of my motivations for what I'm doing with myofascial release, with JIN SHIN JYUTSU, has been a matter of necessity and also searching for options. As we're sitting here, forgive my constant chatter, but like I said, I'm asked to go ahead If you guys have any questions at all during this, I'm open to, if you have any questions that I bring up a topic or you have a question clinically, I can try to answer the best I can. During the presentation, I think I've been asked to allow 15 minutes at least upon my conclusion. But if something is very dire, just go ahead and I'm telling Terry that it's okay to chime in and ask. So with the work that I've done with myofascial release, first I need to go over the idea of what this work entails. And with myofascial release, we're working with the three-dimensional connective tissue in the body called fascia. And if you work or cook with raw meat or you see that membrane that is, along the either on the outside covering of the meat or in between the muscles, you'll see that. Well, it's very, very stretchy normally. Of course, you're working with material or tissue that's been processed and dead. So, but in live fascia, it is filled with fluid. And it is there to offer us support for our tissues. And it also encases and embraces our nerves, our muscles, our joints, and again, our blood vessels. So the reason why I got into this originally is I was an occupational therapist for a couple of years. But before that, I was in high school and I had 2 knee surgeries from a sports injury. And they were anterior cruciate ligament tears, which is very common when you're playing sports. So I had the surgeries done back when I was 17, and then another one when I was 21. So I went ahead and left and finished graduate school, and then I started working. And I noticed that after about a couple of years after graduate school, I started having excruciating pain in my knees. And when I was working at my facilities, I'd be walking with my patients, and sometimes they couldn't tell which one was the patient and which one was a therapist. I was walking so badly. I was in so much pain. So I heard about this practitioner, about this work called myofascial release. And I had talked to some senior therapists that have had 20 or more years experience, and they said, well, that's just a bunch of snake oil. So I'm just going to tell you right now, that really piqued my interest. If there's anything that seems to create the status quo, to question, or to become a little bit resistant, I want to know more. So I went ahead and took courses, and lo and behold, it was a weekend course. And in John's courses, he lectures, and then you break up with a partner and you go over techniques. And I was amazed in that my pain disappeared that I'd had for years after just doing and practicing a simple technique with someone I didn't even know. And they practiced on me. So that was a beginning for me. And once I started practicing, I ended up becoming a practitioner, and then I became an instructor. I believed it so much. So as we're sitting here, just enjoying the 26s, I have to offer a Thanksgiving and for gratitude for all those who have been in my life. And I always make sure that I give thanks to those who have developed my skills. When I work with people, sometimes you hear, and I'm sure you hear it too, they said, "Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much." And I always remind them, it's not just me, it's the people that I also worked under and learned from. So what I want to do before I go any further is to offer thanks to Mary Burmeister, to my instructors that I've had with JIN SHIN, Petra, Jed, Ian, Wayne, Terry. And I also would like to thank John Barnes for having him find me the pathway to better myself and those around me. And the thing with this kind of work, JIN SHIN and myofascial, people ask, because I see everything from 8 to 10 patients a day. And they say, how do you do it? How are you not getting tired? How are you not fatiguing? And I always let them know, you're missing part of the equation. Yes, I'm practicing with these people. Yes, they're wanting my help, just like you are as practitioners. But a lot of times people forget the patient themselves is part of the equation. It's, again, it's not just us, it's them. They have that healing. And what we call sometimes, we just have to kick the pebble into the water to facilitate healing. So I just want to let you know again, you may not have a pen or paper with you, and that's fine. But something I would recommend online is a website or YouTube or Facebook. And if you write down "Strolling Under the Skin," Dr. Guimbardo, he's a French hand surgeon who started this over 30 years ago. He has actual footage of living fascia inside the body. And you can see the intricacy, but also just the life that this fascia and the JIN SHIN has the effect on. So strolling under the skin. So just in a nutshell, with the myofascial release, we look at an individual, they come in and they complain of either pain or discomfort, or sometimes changes in sensation, or reduction in range of motion. And I wore this shirt because it's sort of a pretty good rough analogy of the fascia and the effects it have on us. So if you could imagine, fascia is like the internal fabric of the body. And with that, when you look at an individual, you have to be careful not to be hoodwinked by the symptomology. So the old saying with our work is, you acknowledge the pain, but look elsewhere for the cause. So with this shirt, this is like fascia. And I'm just going to give you a simple analogy. So fascia can be tightened. It can create pressure on, again, the nerves, blood vessels, joints. But what happens is, the reason why I use this shirt is that I'm going to go ahead and simulate a restriction. So with this shirt, I'm going to show you. So let's say we have a restriction here, and this is the fabric of the shirt. Now, if you look, look at these stress lines that go throughout. And you have a restriction down here. Now, clinically, this is just an analogy. Someone comes in and they have shoulder pain, left shoulder pain. And so what we used to do years ago, before I did myofascial and JIN SHIN, I would go and put ultrasound, hot packs, range of motion, and of course, crap loads of exercise. And maybe there was a temporary improvement, but usually the results weren't lasting. So what this shows you is that if you look at this ley line, this could be like shoulder pain, this could come up, this could be like neck pain, this could be abdominal pain. But what we do is we feel for restriction and we look at how the body handles gravity. So instead of trying to follow the symptoms, we look for the cause. And if the cause is a restriction, which sometimes, and you see this a lot, these people will tell you, you know, ever since I had my gallbladder removed, ever since I had my appendectomy, ever since I had my, well, another one is a hernia repair, even a C-section, I'm having these issues, and I don't know why. Chances are it could be a fascial restriction somewhere. And I always let people know, if you have a knee surgery or if you have abdominal surgery, you got to continue to work on these scar areas. So the idea is, let's go ahead, instead of chasing symptoms, let's just take away the pressure and try to release those restrictions. Therefore, taking the pressure out of the system and creating space. So again, I did this for myself. And it's a lot of reasons why I practice JIN SHIN and myofascial is because it has done wonders for me and my family. So when working with the myofascial release, you gently go into an area and you place what we call low load or sustained pressure. And there's a phenomenon called piezoelectric. And it's a big word. It just means electrical pressure. Because we're over 70% water and we have electrolytes in our system, when we go into this type of treatment, the tissue has a time where it goes from more solid to liquid. So for instance, I always give the analogy of our body is like Jell-O. Okay, so if you look at Jell-O in the refrigerator, you pull it out, it's pretty solid. It's got motion, but it's solid. If you held it in your hand for a little while, you start noticing it softens and melts. Okay, that is the term that we use, a thawing effect. So you go to an area and you put pressure, and then of course it gets a little more advanced if you start to stretch the areas out. But that is the parallel that I found between myofascial and JIN SHIN. John talks about the fascial voice. That is, he says, you're going to feel a pulse eventually. And again, my myofascial journey started in '95. I started JIN SHIN in 2007, 2008. Now, let's backtrack a little. I went ahead and started my fast release for myself because I needed something, and I was amazed how it helped my knees out. JIN SHIN started because of my family. I was an instructor. I was in Pennsylvania, and while at those locations back then, if you remember, Borders was around, Barnes and Noble, fantastic. So I love books. I'm not into electric books. I need to have that tangential feeling. And I give myself permission to be open and attracted to things or sides that seem to resonate with me. So I'm in this bookstore and I find this book. And I said, Touch of Healing. Well, you know, I was also a massage therapist too. And anything that has touch on it, ooh, it's interesting. And then I'm also very left brain. And I was fascinated with, again, just looking at it, I saw all the arrows and what I call vectors of motion, vectors, directions, directionality. And I thought, damn, this is pretty awesome. And of course, I bought it and I gave it to my wife. I said, here, you read this. So I was out teaching. My wife read this and she started using it on herself. And I never forgot, she told me she was really developing a sore throat, feeling ill, and she followed simple directions of following some of the flows in that book, The Touch of Healing. And she said it was amazing. The symptoms she cleared up the next day. Well, that was one positive. The one that was really the turning or tipping point for me to really pursue this was my son, born in Pennsylvania, and he developed asthma. And when he was 3, he got to the point where he wasn't able to breathe, and he ended up getting, I guess, bronchiolitis. So we went to the hospital, and here's this little bitty body, and you're talking about helplessness, and you see in this child who's on respirator, he's on oxygen, all the monitors are showing, and the vitals are just going opposite of what they should be. SpO2, your oxygen saturation levels were dropping, even though he was on oxygen. His heart rate was going up. We're like, God, what are we gonna do? We tried everything. We tried therapeutic touch, myofascial. And so my wife says, Rich, let's try this. I've been reading this book. Let's hold these points. So I said, okay, let's do it. So while he was in ER, we were holding 8 and 16s. Okay. And as we held it, it was just amazing. It was, if you want to call it, it was a very empirical experience. Empirical meaning that it was showing proof using standardized equipment, which was your vitals machines. His oxygen level started to normalize. His heart rate started to come back from tachycardia to normal heart rate. And I was amazed. And I'm sitting here, and to be honest, we were both very happy, but I sort of have a little bit of a morbid mentality, especially when it comes to the unknown. So I told my wife, I said, okay, I know this is working well, but let's see what happens when we take our hands off of them. Holy cow. So we took our hands off and we watched and we waited, and all of a sudden the vitals started to go in balance again. Oxygen went down, heart rate went up. I said, holy cow, it is actually the points that are working. So we continue to treat him with JIN SHIN. And that for me sold me on following that. So what I would like to do is one of my favorite flows on myself. And since we're talking about information, we're also dealing with learning. I like to give myself and individuals my work on my 21s. So that is underneath your cheekbones, and just hold. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to give myself and give everyone else opportunity, the permission to unload the mental bondage, the clutter, the worries, and give you clarity while we're enjoying our time together. Of course, this also works too if you want to do weight management, especially if you need to gain weight, you need to lose weight, allowing that harmony to occur. I give this to my patients as well to go ahead and improve or reduce headaches. I'm a firm believer in the easier a home program is, the more likely my client or patient's going to follow it. So if they feel uncomfortable or if they feel like this is too hard to do, we have a thing called the children's pose. And that is, you just let your face rest in your hands while you're sitting at your desk or table. Now, I was taught by several instructors saying, just like Terry was talking about, as long as you're using your hands, it's not necessarily always needed that you go for specific hand positions. And I had an epiphany one day driving through Philadelphia, holy smacks, and New Jersey. Oh God, New Jersey. Did you know they have jug handles? Holy cow, I'm from Texas. So, you know, you're always got an easy way to turn off of a highway. And I was going into Jersey, going to teach a course. And I'm like, how do I get over there? And they I finally took time out to look, and I said, well, oh my God, you have to go around and go to a jug handle, and then you cross over. So I had the epiphany of what I found, this is just me, is that with JIN SHIN, yeah, we are here to energize, we are here to reconnect, redirect energy. But the old saying is, if you miss the exit, there should be another one coming up that you can take. It might take a little bit longer, but you're gonna go ahead and get the same results. So when I tell people about when I use JIN SHIN, if you have a hard time doing the specific hand positions, I found that the idea of just holding and breathing, you will eventually feel that pulse come in. So just as we're resting here, giving yourself permission to let your face rest in your hands and let the table support your arms. This should be effortless. Effortless. I also found that doing this also helps Bell's palsy. If you have someone or if you have an issue with Bell's palsy, I've had good results with this because you're working with the trigeminal nerve, one of the cranial nerves in the head. Talked about sinus, opening up. Sometimes it helps with headaches. Again, the idea is getting yourself comfortable. This is the whole idea. I never forgot Jed one time when he was teaching, he says, you know, I do this in bed. And he does like the one flow main central vertical. He goes, I put pillows all around me so I can just rest my arms while I'm doing the flows. And he's exactly right. The more relaxed you are, the less stress. The old saying that Mary would say is, with more intention, you create more person intention. So the other thing is too, with the JIN SHIN JYUTSU, I feel like it is very empowering. And my personal feeling is I think JIN SHIN is the ultimate first aid for the ultimate self-care. It gives you that permission to take care of yourself. And you can do it in a simple way. And everything is within your reach, within your breath. So my purpose today is to offer my perspective on what has worked for me and my outpatients, but also more importantly is to realize the gratitude that you have, that you offer, so you may better receive. And as a practitioner, whether you do it for income, or you do it gratis because you volunteer, or you do it to people that you love, that you are taking care of yourself in order to care for others. The old saying is, I have to take care of me so I can take care of we. One phenomenal thing that another parallel that I've seen with myofascial and also with JIN SHIN JYUTSU is that when you're working with someone with myofascial release, they may feel sensations or they may feel movement in other parts of their body. And to me, that's a good sign to check to see if they're diagonal. Let me see, I hit it here. Your diagonal flow is functioning well. So it's not unusual if I'm working on someone and I'm working on their jaw, or if we're working on their shoulder, let's say left shoulder, and then they're saying like, oh, this is really weird. I said, what? There's nothing. Is this normal? That's a big thing. Is this normal? And I'm like, there is no normal, okay? Take the pressure off. Well, I don't want to sound crazy. I said, good, sound crazy. So they'll like, you know, I feel this in my you're working on my left shoulder, but I feel it in my right big toe. I said, tells me the diagonal flow seems to be working pretty well. Because if they're starting to feel things opposite of the body part that I'm working on, that's a confirmation. This is what I say, okay? This is just me. If I'm working with someone and they show progress, but it does not hold, this is where, again, we incorporate looking at attitude. Looking at attitudes. Attitude, whether it be someone's expression, their emotion, or the attitude, again, that's within the JIN SHIN universe inside our body. So again, I like to go ahead and work with trying to keep open a diagonal flow. Okay. So that's really important whenever I'm treating someone. I always check the diagonal flow. And if I can, I'll go ahead and do a quickie, a 10, and then opposite 1. And I'll work with them and I will say this, the work with myofascial is phenomenal, but the JIN SHIN JYUTSU has created such a difference in the effort that I use when working with individuals. It's almost like you're giving the body the permission to prepare and to open up to the effectiveness of other techniques that I've used. And the myofascial, I will say, it is amazing. You will see changes in individuals. The whole idea too is with myofascial and JIN SHIN, you are working with the subconscious. You get people, and I'm sure you've heard this too, when you're younger, your mom would tell you, sit up straight, pull your shoulders back, pull your head back, stop walking like a duck, bring your feet back forward, whatever. And you know what? Okay, yeah, we did that. But it only worked for a few minutes because you have less nerve connections that are conscious compared to the subconscious. With the myofascial release, you are working with the subconscious. You are releasing the tissue. You are complementing, and with JIN SHIN, you're traveling throughout the entire body. You're having that effect. It's like working with a pool of water. And what we've always been taught is that we are individuals. If you want to call yourself, if you want to visualize yourself as liquid light. Because with liquid light, you're always in flux, allowing change to occur. That's why I loved when I first heard about JIN SHIN and they addressed problems, as projects. God, that was just, how mind-blowing that was as a practitioner, as a therapist, where you work with people who are constantly coming to you and they don't feel like that there's a potential for change. With the myofascial and the JIN SHIN, it is amazing what you see and what you feel. And you're quiet and you're there. I'm going to give you a few things real quick, and then this is just my experience. But if people are talking through your session, what John says, they're just flushing their money down the toilet. Because when you are talking and you're trying to work with them and you're working in that aspect, we see that the person is disassociating from their body. So they need to come back in. So when you're working with someone in JIN SHIN, I loved it because it's very quiet as well. The difference with that we find is some people, they may not like the quiet. And so as you work with them, you start noticing maybe they're talking less. That's progress. But giving them permission, showing them to hold their fingers. I wanted to go over a lot of self-help regarding things you can do. And this is what I like, doing things under the radar. Okay, so everyone's like, oh my God, if you're doing this thing, in public, and they're like, what the hell are they doing? But there are certain hand positions and postures that work fantastically, that work under the radar of people questioning what you're really doing, whether it be holding your hand, holding your fingers during the meeting, holding your knees, holding anything that empowers you without you having to worry about feeling like you're being observed or judged. So that's one thing I'd like to present again someday, is some of the techniques and some of the JIN SHIN that has complemented the clinical aspects of what I experienced. So my timer is about running out. I can't believe I've been talking for 40 minutes. Holy cow. So if you guys have any questions, Terry, if you want to chime in, if you want to facilitate anything, I can answer the best I can. And I do appreciate all of you for your time, because the way it is nowadays, time is so important, because you're actually offering it to yourself and to those around you.
Okay, Rich. We got Yona raised her hand. Yona, do you want to unmute yourself?
Oh yeah. Well, I can give you a big hug. I almost didn't make this class, and I'm so glad I'm here to hear what you had to say. I feel like I'm getting tingles all over. I'm sort of been humming with bliss or happiness or what word you want to use, because this is all so resonant for me, because I am obsessed these days with fascia. And I've been doing, Anita's webinars on the fascia, and it's funny because she's really got me into this. Before, I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner and also a JIN SHIN practitioner. And every time I would hear fascia, I would go, oh, there's that word again. And then when I kind of like working with her, and then I was kind of going, fascia, yeah. And now it's like, wow, and I love when you said fascial voice, because that was so interesting to me. Because I'm also a singer, and a lot of times when I do JIN SHIN with myself or Feldenkrais, on an exhale, I get a sound that comes out. And I love that, but everything you said, I was like, yeah, right on. Oh, wow. I wish I lived in your area. I would come and have a session with you, but everything you said was fantastic. And also thank you for doing 21. It happens to be my latest obsession of the cells. So that was another thing. I was like, oh yeah, another one. So thank you so much.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you for your input. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, great class.
Hey, Yona. Yona? Yeah. Okay.
What?
So Anita Willoughby, JIN SHIN instructor. So I have some, whoops. Can you still see me? My screen has gone blank.
I can only see myself.
Can everyone hear me or see me or anything?
I hear you.
Yes, we can see you, Terry.
Okay, I can't see. The screen has done a blank on me. Okay, Yoni, did Anita, oh, here we go. Did Anita talk about second depth and sixth depth when she was talking about fascia?
She's been focusing on the main central and everything related to the fascia, the nervous system, endocrine. She's been kind of going through things systematically. And now she's dealing with, we just had 1 through 4 safety energy locks. So yeah, she's talking about everything. I mean, she's obsessed. I'm on her train with this. But yeah, and there's, I think, 4 more classes of this this particular series she's doing. So if people want to check it out, they can go to the website.
Yeah. So she advertises on the JIN SHIN JYUTSU Spirit Mind Body website, JSMB. So yeah, I mean, I did hear she was doing it, but I didn't know exactly at what level. Okay, that's great. So is there anybody else got any questions for Richard or Rich? You can speak or raise your hand.
If not, I have some things to bring up real quick.
Okay, fire away.
If no one has a question, if someone has a question, please go ahead and intervene.
I'm just going to look in the chat just in case.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Susan asks, do you have any hint for a too big heart? I don't know what you mean by that, Susan. Do you mean physically it's too big or emotionally?
Right.
Hello,
Susan?
sorry for the confusion. Yes, it's physically.
Okay. Richard, over to you.
Physically, I guess some of the questions we need to look at, again, we're talking about working clinically, and we want to make sure if you're working with someone with too big of a heart, again, this is very light work, myofascial wise, and also JIN SHIN wise. So, but we look at opening up the rib cage, opening up the myocardial space. So I was just going to tell you, it's interesting. I thought, now that you bring that up, I was going to say people who have had open heart surgeries, it is imperative that you work with them under JIN SHIN and myofascial. Because if you look, when I do this to my shirt, it creates tensions. It goes up into the neck, into the shoulder, the chest itself. And they've also found that people who have had open heart surgery or any kind of thing with the heart, it affects the heart chakra. Their moods change. Their sometimes they have failure to thrive. Sometimes they have, again, the most obvious things, or they have chest tightness, but it doesn't come on right away, usually. Again, with the fascia, with the myofascial release, if someone has a procedure, you have to wait at least 6 weeks before you actually start working deeply and directly on those incisions, all on those places that have been opened up, whether it's through good intention through surgery or if there's a laceration or an injury. So if you have someone that has an enlarged heart, you want to make sure that when you're working with them, that you're not going to put too much stress on that area, especially if they have a stent. Also be careful if they have a defibrillator or a pacemaker, you can still work on those areas. But if they have an enlarged heart, respiratory diaphragm release, phenomenal. 14s, big time. 13s, okay? And I could talk about this all day. When I do JIN SHIN, I actually use myofascial foundations. So when I'm releasing someone, when I'm doing a 13, and they start to open up, and all of a sudden I noticed that for some reason maybe they were tight when I started working on them. If my fingers get drawn in, if I notice that their tissue starts to soften, I'm going to take that slack out. I'm going to go ahead and continue in and deeper and deeper and deeper. So it isn't just we're going to go ahead and stay on the surface. Give yourself permission to follow, or to, the body's inviting you in. Go in and work with that. And don't be afraid. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I did not say this before, but I always tell my patients before I start working on them, if there is ever a point where it gets too painful, too uncomfortable, or too scary, because this releases a lot of memories, this myofascial release, and a lot of sometimes emotions. If they get frightened, they have to know that they're always in control. So I use cue words such as ease up, and this is from John. John's taught us this. So use the term ease up or halt. The reason why we don't say stop or no is because those are arbitrary vocalizations. So it's not unusual when you're working with someone, they're like, oh God, oh, it hurts, oh, stop. And then we're like, okay, ease up or halt. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's just, okay, there you go. That's all right. So you have to dialogue with them. Dialoguing is different than talking. Dialoguing is different than empty conversation. Dialoguing allows people individually to go deeper into their body, into the situation. So when you talk about enlarged heart, think about opening up the chest cavity, opening up the respiratory diaphragm. Make sure, be careful again, you want to make sure that they don't have a hiatal hernia. You can still work around it. You never want to release a hernia area because the body is protecting itself. And if there's a hernia, it's tied around it for a reason, because the body's trying to keep the intestines from coming out. So it's protecting it. It's creating its own scar tissue. We create our own scar tissue without an external surgery or an external laceration. So that happens either sometimes through infection, repetitive use, immobility, that we develop naturally. And some people develop scar tissue more than others. There is conditions like Ehlers-Danlos. I have several people I worked with before. That is a genetic condition where they do not have healthy connective tissue. So you have to really watch out when you work with them, because they don't have that strong connective tissue we have. So heart, also, like I said, respiratory diaphragm. And what I was going to say is that I highly recommend, and we're recommended by John, is that you need to be treated, if you can, by someone else. Okay, by somebody, and because you need to go ahead and keep yourself open, reduce the restrictions. And as I read in JIN SHIN, it seems to be more effective when someone is treating you as opposed to when you're treating yourself. I had read, I think Mary said a 78% chance of success when you treat yourself. Go to courses, go to a study group. I don't know if you've got study groups, but in my fascial, we try to promote going to study groups. You go as a group, you come in, everyone has the intention of, I want to practice these techniques, but more importantly, that energy of focus permeates throughout the entire session and each individual. So it's amazing some of the things you can get done with people who come in who are resonating with the same focus. Sorry about that, becoming off topic a little bit there.
Not at all. Wow. Just looking at the clock and not wanting to just looking at the clock and not wanting to stop, I said.
Can you come back?
Yeah, it's up to Terry, you know.
No. Just not wanting to stop.
It's
Has anyone?
Tip, so you got to ask Terry. I would love to. So.
Anyone got any last minute questions? Here we go. 60 seconds and counting. Mickey. All right, Mickey.
Yes, Yona was asking if Richard could post his contact information or his website, if he has a website. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I can. I don't have a website at this point, but I can give you my email address. And I would love to go ahead and like I said, interface with you. What's it? That's not a terrible impersonal way of saying it, but I could, talk with you about that.
Very clinical. Yeah.
So I could, I'll let him do that, or wherever you need me to post it. I'll do that.
Hey,
I don't have a website.
Can you
So-
see the chat there? Can you see the chat?
Where?
It says chat.
Oh,
Under,
wait, let me click on this.
I can put it in if not.
I don't see it.
Okay, so what's your email, Rich, that you want
It
people to
is
use?
Staudt, my last name, Staudd as in dog, T as in Tom. The next word is therapy. The next word is services at gmail.com.
All right. Okay, Rich,
Yeah,
is there two T's there? Is it STAUDT
It's-
and then therapy?
it's TT, yes. It's
Yeah,
two T.
therapy services at Gmail. Okay, everybody, I've just put that in the chat room. Can you see that? Is there anything else? Can you see that?
That just came up. Yes, I did see that.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Rich? Anything, maybe a meeting coming up or a course or anything?
All I could tell you is with the John Barnes myofascial, I like to go ahead and promote that because it's made such a huge change in my life, my family's life, my career. And I believe so much that the myofascial release and JIN SHIN, they are so complementary and they're so encompassing. As you get down the rabbit hole with myofascial, you start working more deeply with the idea of changes again with habits. You working off the body, and where JIN SHIN again makes those connections. That the nice thing about JIN SHIN again is you can work through the clothing. Some people do JIN SHIN. I guess distance healing. You could do that, but I always recommend, if you can, making sure that you give yourself permission to experience what you're giving to others, because it creates such a more deeply empathic, but also more effective understanding with what you are doing, what you're offering. And I always say every client and patient is a teacher, and I learn everything. I learn so much from each one. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording there.